بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Welcome to Fiqh al-Muamalat online class. And today we shall start with a new subtopic under the Murabahah contract. By the way, we are still in the Murabahah. We have covered a few different aspects within the context of Murabahah, so we carry on the discussion. And it's about the arrangements of Murabahah with other contracts and concepts. So meaning that in the case of Murabahah is deployed in relation with other contract, how is the approach will be. So the first one the first contract that we are starting with is the Wad, the purchase undertaking. So the arrangements of Murabahah with the Wad in the context of Murabahah to the purchase order. So a few points to be covered. The first point is that to remind you of the Murabahah itself, which is a kind of contract to the purchase order, we call it the MPO. It's referred to the arrangements whereby the purchaser, the orderer, promise, make a Wad, make an undertaking to purchase an identified and specified asset from the seller, who is the vendor, on Murabahah terms upon later acquisition of the assets. So it's a kind of arrangement where there is a Wad, the purchase undertaking by the purchaser, and the financial institutions, normally in the context of Islamic finance, we do the acquisition of the asset, then execute the order of sales based on Murabahah, where the disclosure of the cost and the profit margin based on the agreed upon arrangement. So this is the Murabahah arrangements and concept. Now, this in practice, the Murabahah is always connected and related at the initial stage with the Wad, or we call it the purchase undertaking. The Wad, to purchase the assets, normally it is binding. Some other institutions may have the options, because the Wad itself could be binding, could be non-binding. Both practiced by Islamic financial institution, but most of the Islamic financial institution, the bank use the binding Wad, and the binding Wad is allowed by the Islamic financial institution. It is allowed by IOFI standards as well. So in the context of binding Wad, the Wad to the purchase of the assets shall be binding on the purchaser. On the purchaser, orderer, meaning the person, the clients, the customers, who wants to approach the Islamic financial institution to do Murabahah contract for an acquisition of asset, this Wad shall be binding. When the sellers has taken an actions to acquire the asset. So meaning once the institutions or the bank start the process of the acquisition of the asset, so this Wad become binding. Why? Because it's involved the financial institution to some financial obligation. It's become the responsibility of the clients to honor this undertaking and execute the Murabahah. Otherwise, the Islamic financial institution or the bank will indulge in such a financial obligation and may lead to some losses and incur additional cost. Also, because the acquisitions of the asset by the financial institution was as a result of this Wad. So the Islamic financial institution will not do the acquisition of asset if there is no Wad. So the Wad initiated by the customers put the Islamic financial institution in a status of the process of acquisition of the asset for the customer. So this is the first point, that the Wad in the purchase undertaking will be binding by the customers when the Islamic financial institution engage in the process of the acquisition of the asset for the interests of the client. The following point is that the Wad shall be executed separately from and before entering into Murabahah contract. And normally the Wad is initiated at the early stage. At the early stage, before even you draft the master agreements and start the process, meaning he will come and initiate a verbal undertaking, a verbal interest. Of course, it will be reflected later on in a form of legal documentations signed by the customer showing that he's serious for his undertaking. that he agreed that this wad is binding, and he agreed that upon the acquisitions of the asset by the bank, so the customers will execute the murabaha and purchase the asset. So that's the arrangement. So this wad will be executed if it is documented in a form of legal documentation or an agreement before entering in the contract of murabaha, which means the bank has to get a kind of comfort that the clients do the sign off on the purchase of the undertaking before the bank do the acquisition of the asset. The following point is that this wad may be incorporated in the legal documentation, meaning it is an option, but normally in practice it will be part of the legal documentation. But it will be, number one, either in the master agreement provided by the master agreement, provided that the master agreement does not carry an effect of murabaha contract, meaning that there is a master agreement facility that's basically do the arrangements of the entire facility end to end, and in the sub documentation and sub schedules will be the executions of murabaha and other related component of the murabaha. So here what we are saying is that the wad could be incorporated in the master agreement provided that this master agreement doesn't carry the execution of murabaha, meaning that it's just a kind of MOU, it's a kind of a framework, it's a kind of facility arrangements, we call it master agreement, that govern the entire facility. Then subsequent documentation like murabaha and others will come in. So the wad could be incorporated in this agreement provided the murabaha is not there. Or the other option, which is basically more appropriate, is having a separate document. So two options, either separated documents, purchase undertaking, simple one single page or 2 pages or few pages, sign off, standalone documents, or could be incorporated in the master agreement provided that the murabaha contract is, the master agreement doesn't carry the effect of murabaha contract, meaning that otherwise you would be signing on two documents, which is not appropriate because normally the undertaking will come in first, followed by murabaha. The following point under this wad is that the purchase orderer who promised to purchase and take the delivery to the asset but had refused to enter into murabaha, meaning that he make an undertaking, he make a promise, and he signed the undertaking, but upon the executions of murabaha, meaning the time of murabaha comes, meaning he signed the undertaking that the bank purchased the asset, then now the murabaha comes, the clients refuse to execute the murabaha. Now, in this case, he refused to enter to the murabaha contract upon the seller's purchase of the asset as per the agreed terms and conditions. He shall be held liable for such breach of wad, meaning that it will become a breach of wad, and as a result of that, he will be held accountable for such breach, and a course of actions could be undertaken as we are going to discuss. But the bottom line here, the main point, the key point we would like to highlight here, that in case the clients sign the purchase undertaking and the bank do the acquisition of the asset, then when the time of murabaha comes in and the client refuses to do the execution of murabaha, basically the client here will be held accountable for such actions, and proper actions by the bank will be undertaken as we are going to discuss. We'll just stop here for the moment, and inshallah we shall continue in the coming sessions on this wad along with the other related Sharia contract in relation to the murabaha. With that, thank you very much, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.